Don't kill me. I'm having a dinner party.
Hello again, and welcome to the Gentleman Uncles. As always, this is Kyle.
And this is Brylan.
And we needed to cleanse our palate. We needed to,
We've been watching far too many terrible movies.
And don't get us wrong, we still love bad movies. They are still the apples
Near and
in
dear.
our eye. But
Yes.
sometimes you need a palate cleanser. So we decided to watch a movie that is pretty damn brilliant, I would say.
Yes. It came out in like 2010.
Yep.
It's available on Netflix streaming. It is called The Perfect Host. Stars David Hyde Pierce. And before we start talking about the movie, this is gonna be huge spoiler warnings.
Yeah.
Don't listen to this unless you plan on never ever watching it. And if you never want to watch it, you're doing yourself a disservice.
Or
pause it right here.
Pause it, go watch it, come back.
Go watch it and come back.
Yeah.
Because it's an amazing movie, but us talking about it is going to ruin it because it's got so many twists.
Yeah, usually we don't care about spoilers. We really don't.
Yeah.
But
especially because the movies are terrible.
This is a situation in which it is very appropriate. Do not listen to us if you don't want to hear spoilers on the movie. Go watch it, come back and listen to us, and we'll all have a good time. But that being said, The Perfect Host, starring David Hyde Pierce and
Clayne Crawford,
who I don't recall seeing before.
He did other stuff. I was just looking at it. The most recognizable thing, at least for me, that he did was he was in season 8 of 24. He was in 9 episodes of that. He played Kevin Wade. He's done a lot of stuff. He was on Jericho for 5 episodes. He
was in Risk Cutters: A Love Story.
Yes. He was in 1 episode of Burn Notice. Mostly 1 episode here and there. He was on The Glades for a little bit. He was a couple episodes of Leverage. A few episodes of Justified. So, he's done stuff. The most recognizable thing, for me at least, was the 24 season he did. Yep. But he's good.
Yeah, he is. I
think he plays the sympathetic side of the character that should, well, at least from at the beginning, that you should consider the villain. Yep. He plays the sympathetic side of it very well.
And he and David Hyde Pierce have a great chemistry. They play off each other really well. So basically, what the gist of what the movie is about: a bank robber named John. The movie begins with John just having come from a bank heist, and his foot is
ditching
injured.
His clothes, switching his car.
His foot is injured because he jumped through the window, or like the glass door.
Yeah, some plate glass thing cut his foot.
So he's panicking. He's trying to find some place to lay low and tend to his foot.
And he's already been recognized, and the police have his name and stuff, and they're talking about it on the radio, and so that's how he knows that he needs to hide.
Yeah. So he tries a couple places, and nothing pans out, and he eventually ends up at this house, and it looks like it's near Pasadena. Like that area.
Yeah, it's like high class, suburban something. Yeah. Oh, this movie, it probably was near Pasadena. Something interesting I read about it. It was all filmed on location in LA, and it only took them 17 days to shoot. Amazing.
I wouldn't be surprised if the house that it takes place in wasn't somebody's in the cruise.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Or even David Hyde Pierce's house. I wouldn't be 100% shocked.
Yeah.
But he ends up at the home of Warrick, who at the time is
He goes through his mail to try and find something out about him so he can have a angle to approach him from when he knocks on the door.
And he finds a postcard from a woman named Julia who's vacationing in Sydney. So he goes to the door posing as someone who met Julia and was told that he and Warrick would hit it off, and wouldn't you know it, he was mugged, and the airport lost his luggage, so could he come in and make arrangements?
Yes.
And Warrick is a gentleman and a classy man who's preparing for a dinner party and invites him in to help him out.
Julia would never forgive me if I didn't help you, since she thought we'd be good friends.
Exactly.
Like
they have tete-a-tete. They have some conversation. John eventually hears over the radio that a description of himself and that he's wanted, and he flips out at Warrick because Warrick has the gift of gab, and he's talking over the radio.
John is trying to listen to what information they have about him.
And he reveals himself to Warrick. There's some great tension between the two characters at this point. John is holding him at knife point, threatening to kill him. He actually tells him at one point, "I've decided already that I'm going to kill you, but if you're smart and you're lucky, if you play it right and you're smart and you're lucky, you can change my mind." So John seems to be in control. Then all of a sudden, John passes out. He passes out. And what you come to realize is that Warrick is actually a psychopath who drugs
Warrick
him.
was drugging his wine, yes.
Drugging his wine that he'd been drinking all night. And when he comes to, he's bound at a very nicely set dinner table to Warrick having a meal, sharing a meal with, and having conversation with 4 people that aren't there.
There are full place settings for everyone, though, and food on all the plates, and this is where the cinematography really starts to get good, is there will be... I didn't even notice if it was cuts or just somehow a really good working of camera angles on a pan or something, but you'll see the 4 people sitting at the table, and then you won't, and so you kind of start getting into the mind of David Hyde Pierce's character Warrick. You start getting into his mind and seeing the delusion that he's in, and then still experiencing the just complete strangeness of the situation from John's perspective at the same time.
Exactly.
So it's really well put together that way, directorially and cinematographically.
Exactly. And this movie is I wouldn't describe it as a comedy. It's a very
it's a dark comedy, but it's more of a suspense thriller almost.
Yeah, it's a suspense thriller with comedic elements. The comedy of it all comes from pretty much just John experiencing Warwick's delusions. There are a couple scenes that stand out as being funny, though. There's a scene where Warwick...
The dance scene?
Well, I'll get to that. But there's a scene where Warwick asks everyone if they're enjoying themselves, and it shows John sitting alone in the room, and he kind of looks around and goes, well, I can't speak for everyone else here, but I'm having a great time.
Yeah.
There's that, and then...
There's a few others like that, too.
In the same scene, Warwick asks one of the fantasy people to help him lift John's chair up, walks up to the side of John's chair, and
counts. He's like, okay, ready, 1, 2, 3.
And then just flips him over.
Yeah, because they're going to each pick up from his side, and so all he does is lift his side, and John goes, thwump! Tied to the chair and all, and gets dragged through the house.
And there's a couple instances of that, and then the real icing on the cake, the real cherry on top, is not extended. It's kind of actually very brief, but it's this little dance scene set to the song "At the Car Wash."
Yes, it's while John is still drugged and tied to the chair, and the dinner party has been going on, and more people, invisible, fake people, have shown up to this party, and Warrick and his 4 the people who were there eating dinner, do a little dance number where Warrick is dancing on the table, and the other 4 of them are dancing on chairs standing next to him, and
at this point, Warrick is very drunk, and he's smoked a little weed, so it's not just something that comes out of left field. It's, okay, this is a party now, in his mind, and he's having a good time. So there's little elements like that here and there, but I wouldn't necessarily call it a comedy at all. What the movie basically boils down to is it's about fantasies that people create for themselves.
Yeah.
Warrick's are very apparent. He creates the fantasy of people and a dinner party and all this. And John, the reason he robs the bank is he has a girlfriend who has some kind of illness that causes her pain.
I believe it was endometriosis or something like that. Extreme pain and cramping, and she's clutching her lower abdomen, and whatever the surgery would be to get it fixed is
not covered by her insurance.
Not covered by insurance. They just call the surgery
an elective procedure.
Yeah, it's an elective procedure. So his girlfriend needs the surgery so she won't be in pain every day.
So he decides to rob the bank to...
And the thing is, he already had been in prison.
He had a record of...
For doing the same thing.
I believe it was assault with a deadly weapon. Was armed robbery part of his rap sheet?
I think, yes, it was assault with a deadly weapon, armed robbery... stuff like that.
So he had a record.
Then he had gotten out of prison, and he was, trying to live clean with his girlfriend.
Yeah, but so he's not a greedy guy. He's not a bad guy. He was in a situation where he felt, this is what I know how to do, I'm going to fix this problem. But the fantasy world that he concocted for himself was that he could have that life, that life was the real life. But it wasn't, because as it turns out, his girlfriend, who's actually a teller at the bank, was setting him up. Because
she was totally long-conning him.
Yep, she was setting him up to basically take the fall so she could get the money and run off with it.
Yeah, basically her plan was, I'm going to rob the bank I work at, get $300,000, and no one will know that I was in on it.
And this Patsy will do all the work for me.
Yeah, he'll do all the work, and then he'll take the fall, and I'll skedaddle before he realizes what happened.
So the person that his girlfriend was claiming to be was fake, the life that John was trying to set up for himself was fake, and the entire world that Warrick lives in is fake. So the entire movie is about these fake personas that people make for themselves.
Yes.
And now here's the big spoiler. At the end of the movie, it's shown that Warrick is actually...
Well, about probably like half an hour before the end of the movie.
Yeah, okay.
There's still a good
near the end of the movie, though. It shows
after all the torture and... Oh, well, we didn't go over what Warrick... He's got him tied to a chair for a reason. He's shown him this album of other people, and the album is listed, midnight, 3 a.m., 6 a.m.,
it's kind of
9, midnight, and it's pictures of these people tied to chairs and slashed up and dead in the bathtub, and there's like 4 or 5 different people on each page of the time, and Warrick tells John, there's plenty of room in this book for you, too.
Yep.
And so he's basically going to kill John, is what John believes.
Yep, and the entire movie is basically a mental power struggle between John and Warrick.
Which plays out beautifully
it really
the chess
does.
scene.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Especially with the flashbacks built in on that, too.
Now, but what ends up happening is Warrick is actually a police lieutenant investigating John's crime. That isn't revealed until about 20 minutes before the ending. So, not only does Warrick see people that aren't there, that are fake, he creates a persona for himself that also isn't real. Yes,
which I would argue the police lieutenant persona is not real, because he truly is mentally disturbed.
Yeah,
but it's amazing. I mean, this is one of the greatest acting performances probably I've ever seen. David Hyde Pierce, I've just ever seen, period. But David Hyde Pierce is spectacular. When you see him the entire time, he's just David Hyde Pierce, as you kind of expect to see him.
He's very Niles.
Very Niles. Very unassuming and kind of meek with his regular voice. And, I mean, there's definitely an undercurrent of, like, psychosis or delusion or something underneath that kind of makes him, maybe he's a little scary, but he's still very Niles. But as soon as one of the detectives from the police station that you've kind of been cutting to in and out shows up at his door, his voice drops to a lower register. His whole mannerisms take on a more masculine, macho, like, physicality. His walk changes.
He hunches a little bit. He hunches, like, slouches his shoulders.
It's an amazing physical and vocal transformation to put on his persona of being his lieutenant. The persona that the whole rest of the world believes is the real Warrick.
And apparently he's very good at it, because he says, doesn't he say that the other detective, he had known him for, 4 years?
He's known that guy for like 6 years.
Yeah. So
he says 10, the detective says 6, he says 6, yeah.
Yeah, so it's something he's very good at, but that doesn't make it real.
Right.
Now,
and he is medicated. He just doesn't take his medication when he does these dinner parties.
Now, John's ultimate fate is one of the most interesting things about the movie. This whole time, John passes out periodically. Either he's drugged or Warrick hits him with something. And when he comes to, he usually has more gashes on his face, bleeding cuts.
Bleeding cuts, bruising. He's really gotten the shit kicked out of him.
And near the end of the film, just before Warrick, the police persona that Warrick has, shows itself, it shows John in the driveway of his house with his throat cut. And
like laying on the garbage bags.
Yeah, just out with the garbage. But then John wakes up, and he stands up, and he kind of feels his face, and he peels one of the gashes off. And then he looks, he kind of looks, he's feeling around.
He looks at a mirror, and a side view mirror on a motorcycle he walks past.
And he sees the gash on his neck, and he reaches for it, and he peels that off. So all the injuries, 90% of the injuries that he's sustained over the night were 100% fake. Warrick didn't actually do anything to him. And there's multiple scenes where there's a scene where he sits John down and forces him to watch a Super 8 film of himself cutting on his stomach and on his chest and on his tongue, just cutting himself with a knife. But then later in the movie...
And the interesting thing is, he says, I did my own hair and makeup.
Yep, he says, I did my own hair and makeup, which is a big indicator right there.
Yeah.
But you don't know it at the time.
You're just like, you're fucking crazy, bro.
Yeah, you thinking, I made this film, I did my own hair and makeup. But, while he's watching it, he's sitting there, he's leaning close to Johnny saying, oh, that's so beautiful. So he's clearly disturbed on a very heavy level. So you wouldn't pick up on what he's actually talking about until later on, there's John lunges at him with a knife and stabs him, and the knife turns out to be fake as well. And
right, like one of those push-in knives.
Yeah, but it looks like a short. I'm not quite sure.
It's a tonto.
A tonto, but it turns out to just be one of those staged retractable knives. And Warrick stands up laughing, lifts his shirt up to show that there's no wound, and his chest and his stomach completely clean. There's no scarring. Yep. There's no cuts. So even that film was fake.
And the thing is, at that point in the movie, because it's happened right after there's a chess game. Warrick and John end up playing a chess game for John's freedom. Mm-hmm. And John, Warrick says, have you ever played chess before? And John says, oh, once or twice. And then you get interspersed with flashback cuts of him teaching his girlfriend how to play chess. And apparently he's really good. And it ends up with John checkmates Warrick. And
in like 5 moves.
Yeah, it was really fast. And that's right before, so that's when Warrick cuts him free, and that's right before he fake stabs him. So at this point, you're kind of focused on, is John, okay, John's free now, he's escaped, and then at the same time, when Warrick jumps up and lifts his shirt and goes, oopsie, and then you look at the knife, you're not really thinking...
Yeah, you don't even notice that he doesn't have scars.
Yeah, you're not thinking about, oh yeah, there was this movie where he's slicing the shit out of his own stomach. You just think, oh, he's not stabbed, what the fuck is going on? My mind is thinking about that, not about he should be scarred.
You know what? I'm going to change what I said. This movie is not about fantasy. This movie is about misdirection. This entire movie is about misdirection.
This entire movie is a chess game.
Yeah, during the scene where John and Warrick are playing chess, and it cuts to...
Oh my... This entire movie is a chess game. Every character is a piece. And it goes with the flashback where he's talking about, yeah, the king's the most important piece in the game, but he can only do this and this and that, whereas the pawn looks harmless, but he can sneak up on you and this and that. So you think, at first, now that I'm thinking about this, at first you would think, well, Warwick's the pawn because he looks harmless, but he can do the most damage, but when you get to the end, and he sends that Polaroid to the detective.
Yep.
John is the pawn who sneaks up out of nowhere and can do the most damage and will checkmate you with that. Then Warrick is like a bishop or a queen who makes big moves and does a lot of fancy stuff and is dangerous, but at the same time doesn't. And then, or so maybe even you could say that...
I would say the ex-girlfriend's the queen.
The ex-girlfriend's the queen. You might even say Warwick's the king. The two detectives would be the knights.
Yep. Because Warrick appears to have all the power throughout the entire movie. It seems like from right where Warrick reveals who he really is, it seems that he has
when
all
John
the power,
passes out.
But he actually doesn't.
I'm going to have to watch it again now and look at the chess game that he's teaching his girlfriend about, and look at the chess game that Warrick plays with him, and look for parallels in what he's saying when he's teaching his girlfriend, and characters within, because really there's only those six characters in the movie.
Yeah, and the great thing about the chess scene also is you have Warrick and John playing. John is misdirecting Warrick by saying, John says, okay, if I win, I'll give you my freedom, or you'll give me my freedom. And Warrick asks, well, what if I win? And John says, you already have my life, I can't give much more than that.
Yeah.
But Warrick says, if I win, I already have your life. I can't win that. What else will you offer me? So John misdirects Warrick by keeping him focused on what he gets when he wins, so he can stick around and win in 5 moves. While that's happening, it's cutting back to John teaching his girlfriend how to play.
And she's misdirecting him the entire time.
She is misdirecting him the entire time. So you have John being misdirected, and then John misdirecting Warrick. But then Warrick misdirects John because the knife is fake.
With the fake knife and
Yep. So the entire movie is about misdirection.
Oh my god. It's seriously, that whole chess thing just blew my mind.
This movie is absolutely brilliant.
So he gives John his freedom when he dumps him, and you think he's dead, and then he's not. Then John figures out that his girlfriend must have double-crossed him, so he goes and, tries to look for where her car is, where she's renting a car from, figures all that out, goes and meets her, calls her on her shit, takes the car that has the $300,000 in the trunk, and the police had been following her because they'd figured it out as well. And so then they follow her to the same parking garage, and it's Warrick and the 2 detectives. Warrick says, you guys keep going up, I'm going to search the lower levels. The 2 detectives keep driving up and find the girlfriend once she's already been relieved of the money by John. And then Warrick sneaks into and subdues the parking lot attendant and catches John as he's about to leave. And basically Warrick blackmails him by saying, there's 2 options. 1, I can shoot you as you're attempting to flee, or maybe your freedom is worth $300,000. John gives Warrick the money. Warrick gives John back a couple $1,000 and says, customs is going to be hard to deal with. You know, this should help you get to Mexico. So basically, Warrick aids his escape.
Because he has panache.
Yes, because, you know, John says, if you arrest me, we're both going down. And so John gets away, and cut to a couple months later, one of the 2 detectives gets an envelope with no return address, but 2 Mexican postage stamps, and inside is a Polaroid that Warrick had taken with him and John during the party, and all that's written on it is watch out. And so the detective approaches Warrick and is like, hey, what's up with this? And Warrick keeps trying to explain it away, but the detective's like, look, I gotta do this the right way, you know? Gotta be official, gotta put into an inquiry, I need to come search your house. And Warrick's like, come on, don't bring a whole bunch of cops over to my house. He's like, come have dinner with me. What kind of wine do you like? Then the movie's over.
And it implies that Warrick is gonna put the... Well, okay, what that implies is up for debate, because... you could look at this movie as one of 2 ways. I personally don't think Warrick has actually killed anyone. And all those people in the book were just put through what John was put through, and for one reason or another, they never came forward and fingered Warrick to the cops. And it's just all fake, because all of Warrick's world is fake. Everything about him is fake. I don't think he's actually killed anyone. So, from my point of view, you could look at it as he's sick, and he's just going to repeat this cycle again with this cop, and he'll eventually get caught after that. Or he is actually going to kill the cop. Or there's a third way of looking at it, or he's just going to take the money and run. And the invite to the dinner party was just to buy time.
Which would fit with the Misdirection themes.
Exactly. So there's a whole host of ways you can look at this.
That would also be misdirecting the audience. So I'm going to go with option 3. He's taking the money and running, and that last invitation to a dinner party is a misdirection for the cop and a misdirection for the audience. Because the audience has just seen what happens at Warrick's dinner parties, and that's what the audience is going to expect is going to happen with the cop.
Exactly. There's the debate that you and I were having earlier. Has Warrick actually killed anyone in the past?
And see, I'm going to have to think about it and watch it again, looking at it with the misdirection theme and the chess theme being the main theme as opposed to the fantasy. I mean, they're both heavily in there, but I'm going to have to look at it again. But I think it's possible that Warrick has killed all the other people, because I believe that all of his invisible friends are the dead people that he has killed. The people from the book.
I don't remember seeing women in the book, though.
Really, you only ever see one guy, and I think it's Roberto or the not black guy.
The DA.
No, I thought the black guy was the DA.
Yes. Okay, yeah.
So the other one, the artist or the journalist or whatever he was. I think he really did kill all those people, and the only reason he doesn't kill John is because he knows that John won't turn him in, because really, you don't see, well, if he's been drugging him the whole time, though. Because really, you don't see the sick, twisted side of David Hyde Pierce, of Warrick, come out until
John reveals
you hear on the radio, you hear John be like, oh shit, that's me. You know? So it's at that point, I believe, that he decides, I'm gonna fuck with this guy, he's never gonna turn me in, and... you know, maybe he starts planning the long con of, this is how I'm going to get the money. I'll figure out a way.
You could look at it this way. He did have you could look at it as Warrick has killed before, and he had every intention of killing John, but John won the chess match. And and the chess match was for his freedom. So Warrick said to himself, okay, he won, I'm going to let him go, but I'm going to fuck with him a little bit before I do. Which
was also another misdirection for the audience.
Exactly.
Was the fake wounds.
And the misdirection starts right at the beginning. Before he goes up to Warrick's house, he's walking through a neighborhood and he sees a woman with the sign of Jehovah in her window. And
That's the next door neighbor.
yeah, she's next door neighbor, and he goes up to her house pretending to be a Jehovah's Witness, but he gets some details wrong. But she realizes, like, almost right off the bat that he's not who he says he is, but she misdirects him, she toys with him a little bit first before she turns him away. So
Well, the misdirection even starts before that. The misdirection really starts at the very beginning of the movie, where you see he's dumping his clothes and stuff into a trash bag that he had in the back of his car. Then he goes and takes a bike that he had planted somewhere else, rides across town to ditch the bike and the clothes, and gets into a different car. Car switching is something that he had taught his girlfriend about too. That's what they were going to do when they were going to run away with the money. The car switching is a misdirection. And then he misdirects when he's going in to buy some disinfectant for his foot that is bleeding and painful. The little convenience store he goes into gets robbed. He misdirects her until he can get the drop on her.
Yep.
And so the whole thing, misdirection starts from the top of the movie.
this movie's just brilliant. I mean, we could sit here and gush about the acting, which is great. David I. Pierce, these two, they just play off each other brilliantly.
Yes.
Or we could talk about the cinematography,
the writing, the direction.
Yeah, everything about this movie is so well done. There's not a moment in this movie where I feel bored, where I don't feel engaged, where I'm not curious as to what's going to happen next.
Right. And then the fact that it does leave questions unanswered really draws you in, because the questions it leaves unanswered aren't questions you get frustrated about. They're questions that you can actually work on, try and deduce for yourself with multiple viewings.
Exactly. They're not unanswered questions in the sense that they were lazy and just didn't tie up loose ends. It's, what's your interpretation of this? Did Warrick kill anybody? Did he not? Was he planning on killing the cop at the end? Was he planning on taking the money and running?
Yeah. Why didn't he kill John? Was it the chess game? Was it that John wouldn't turn him in? What was it?
It's open to debate. And then there are scenes where it's very simple. I mean, the misdirection theme is there again, but what makes the scene so great is the tension that it builds. At one point, John wants to be untied. So Warrick tells him, okay, you can be untied, but you got to have a cocktail. And he gives him this blue liquid that I'm sure is laced with heavy drugs. And it incapacitates John, where he's still conscious. He has no control over his motor functions. He can't speak.
Yeah, he can't form words. He can just kind of moan and groan.
Yep, but he's still conscious.
Yes.
And Warrick puts him with floaties and an inner tube and is just kind of floating him in the pool. And the neighbor from the beginning of the movie hears him, and she comes over to see what's going on. And Warrick very quickly puts a blanket over him and a creature from the Black Lagoon Gillman mask on his head.
Which is another thing about, that's another hint at the movie makeup side of it, because when he goes and opens that cupboard, there's like 5 rubber masks, and they're all old horror movie
They're all Universal
villains.
Classic monster movies.
Yeah, and they're all like very heavy makeup effect characters.
Yep,
so he puts it on. He puts the mask on him, and the neighbor comes over.
The neighbor comes over, and she sees him. He's there, and he's crying for help in the only way he can, which is just, Argh! And Warrick tells her, we just came from a costume party. He's been in character all night. I can't get him to take this stupid thing off.
Yeah, he's got way too much to drink.
Even to the point where he joins in with John going, Arr, pretending that he's just being a monster. But the air is thick with tension.
And especially because John starts to get a little bit more control over his enunciation and his motor control by the end, while the neighbor is still there, and John keeps trying to pull his mask off and starts to say things that sound a little closer to words.
And the neighbor even says, it looks like he's trying to take his mask off. And he says, oh, thank goodness, I've been trying to get him to do that all night. But it's off to bed with you now. And the neighbor is satisfied and leaves. And as soon as Warrick sees that she's gone, he just sort of drops John like a sack of potatoes on the ground.
Yep.
But there are a lot of scenes like that where the tension is just palpable. There's that scene. There's the chess scene. The tension is really great.
Yeah.
There's the scene where John is originally holding Warrick at knife point.
The scene where Warrick crawls across the table to get in John's face.
Mm-hmm. And that's one of my favorite scenes, too, because when John first wakes up at the dinner table, Warrick is sitting there eating from his plate, and then he gets up and walks over to John to get in his face, and he pauses a couple times to, like, manically eat food off the plates of his dinner guests, which I suppose is just to have food disappear off of it, so...
Right. So that he can explain away that the people are eating.
Yeah.
But the way in which he eats is just creepy.
You know what my favorite scene in the movie is, though?
Which one?
Okay, so at this point, we realize that Julia doesn't exist. The woman that wrote the postcard from Sydney. There's a scene in the movie where things kind of slow down a little bit, and Warrick pulls out several postcards from cities all around the world. And
yes, and John is still tied to a chair, but he has regained his faculties.
Yes, this is after the drugging. It's worn off enough for John to be able to think and speak like a human being again. And Warrick flips one of them over and starts writing a postcard to himself as Julia. And John sees this and just sort of sits there for a second, then looks at Warrick and goes, "Where is she now?" And Warrick has this like very honest answer of, "Oh, she's in Bangkok. She might go to somewhere else, but she hasn't decided yet."
Shanghai or whatever, Hanoi.
I feel like John has a very brief moment of sympathy for Warrick at that point.
Yes, but at the same time, it's where he really starts, I believe, to formulate, because this is right after he's watched Warrick playing a chess game against one of his invisible friends.
Yep.
So this is when the postcards come out. John, I believe that's kind of when he really starts to formulate, this is how I can get out of here.
Yeah, but he starts confronting Warrick on the fact that the people he's talking about and to aren't real.
Yes.
And he after Warrick says where she is, John says, "Who's Julia?" And Warrick says, "The woman you met in Sydney." And John says, "I've never been to Sydney. Julia's
No.
you." So
He admits to being a liar, and
he's formulating a plan in his head, but I also have a feeling, because the way he confronts Warrick isn't mocking. Like, he's not like, "You freak, you fucking weirdo."
Right.
He does it in a very almost respectful way, where I feel like he's trying to get Warrick to understand that what he's experiencing isn't real. It shows that John, at least in my mind, it shows that John has a very mild amount of sympathy for what Warrick is going through.
yeah.
So that's probably my favorite scene in the entire movie. Of course, right after that, the scene is the chess game, and John tries to stab him, but...
Right. That chess scene I really enjoyed. It was because of the use of the flashback during the game, and now that I thought about the whole chess parallel and the whole misdirection kind of a thing, what he's saying to his girlfriend during the flashbacks while the chess scene is going on not only directly apply to chess and directly apply to the scene that's going on with him playing Warrick, they also directly apply overall to the film.
Now, giving a recommendation at this point is kind of moot. We
right.
clearly have been recommending this movie since last week when we said we were going to talk about it. But if you haven't watched it yet,
go watch it again.
Go watch it again. And if you decided not to watch it before you listened to this and heard us talking about it, go watch it anyway.
Yeah. And we would love to hear, go watch it, tell us, do you think that Warrick killed those people? Do you think Warrick is going to kill the detective at the end? What's your take on it?
Post a comment on Facebook, post it on YouTube. We always love to hear from you guys, and this is definitely a movie where we'd love to have a discussion with you guys about what you think.
Yes, because it's a spectacular film. I would love to
really
keep doing good movies like once every couple months.
Me too, definitely. But for now, as always, I have been Kyle.
And I've been Brylan.
And tell us what kind of wine you like. And we'll see you next time.
Good night.
I really wanna be a